The satellite phone crackled in my hand as I stood in the command center at Bagram Airfield, Afghanistan. The text message glowed on the screen, each word a perfectly placed explosive. Sold grandmother's estate yesterday. You weren't using it anyway. Money will help with Melissa's wedding. Dad. I read it 3 times, certain the desert heat was playing tricks on my mind. My grandmother's Victorian estate in San Antonio. The one she'd specifically left to me. The one where I'd spent every summer learning her stories of our family's military heritage. The one I'd planned to restore when my deployment ended. Gone. Just like that. Colonel Martinez? Staff Sergeant Williams approached cautiously. Ma'am, are you all right? I pocketed the phone, forcing my expression neutral. Fine, Sergeant. Just family business. Family business. The words tasted bitter. For 18 months, I'd been conducting intelligence operations in one of the most dangerous regions on Earth, while my family apparently conducted their own operation to dismantle my inheritance. The estate wasn't just property. It was 150 years of Martinez military history. My great-great-grandfather had built it after the Civil War. Every generation since had served, and Grandma Rosa had preserved every letter, medal, and photograph. She'd spent my childhood summers teaching me about duty, honor, and why she was leaving it to me specifically. Marina understands what this means, she told my parents at her 90th birthday, her voice sharp despite her age. The rest of you see real estate. She sees responsibility. Now they'd sold it, while I was 7,000 miles away, unable to defend what was mine. Sergeant Williams, I called out. I need you to handle the briefing. Something's come up. I made my way to the legal office, my boots echoing against the plywood floors. Captain Chun, our JAG officer, looked up from his desk. Colonel Martinez? What can I do for you? I showed him the message. His eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. They sold property that was willed to you? Apparently. I need to know my options. He leaned back, fingers steepled. Were you listed as deployed when this happened? For the last 18 months. Then they've got a problem. Service members have protections under the SCRA, Service Members Civil Relief Act. Any major legal action involving your property requires court approval and your participation. If they sold it without that, it's fraud. It's several kinds of illegal. When do you rotate back? 6 weeks. I'll connect you with a stateside JAG who specializes in property law. Marina. He paused, choosing words carefully. This kind of thing happens more than you'd think. Family members assuming deployment means disappearance. That night, I lay in my bunk staring at the ceiling. The base hummed with its usual activity. Helicopters landing, generators running, the distant sound of the evening call to prayer from beyond the walls. But my mind was in San Antonio, walking through rooms I'd never see again, past portraits of ancestors whose stories were now in some stranger's hands. I pulled up my laptop and started digging. Property records, sale documents, transfer deeds. Everything was public record if you knew where to look. What I found made my blood run cold. The estate had sold for $2.8 million. Below market value by at least $1 million, according to recent comparables. The buyer was Pinnacle Development Group, a company I'd never heard of. But when I traced the corporate structure, a familiar name emerged. Robert Hayward, my sister Melissa's future father-in-law. They hadn't just sold my inheritance. They'd gifted it to Melissa's new family at a massive discount. Sleep didn't come that night. Or the next. I threw myself into my duties, leading intelligence briefings and coordinating operations with a focus that my subordinates probably attributed to professional dedication. They didn't know I was planning my own operation. 6 weeks later, I stood in the arrivals area of San Antonio International Airport. My dress uniform was crisp, every ribbon and medal precisely placed. The silver oak leaves of a lieutenant colonel caught the fluorescent lights. I'd earned this rank through 3 combat deployments and 15 years of service, but my family still pictured me as the bookish girl who'd rather read military history than go to parties. They were about to meet who I'd become. The first call came as I waited for my rental car. Marina? My mother's voice was carefully modulated, the tone she used for difficult clients at her real estate firm. We heard you were back. How was your little deployment? Productive, I replied. I'll see you at the hearing tomorrow. Silence. Then, what hearing? The one where we discussed the illegal sale of my property. Your summons should have been delivered yesterday. Marina, don't be ridiculous. We're family. We don't need courts. I hung up. The offices of Thornton and Associates occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise. James Thornton himself met me in the lobby, a favor to Captain Chun, who'd served with him in Iraq. Colonel Martinez. His handshake was firm. I've reviewed your case. Your parents are in significant legal trouble. The SCRA violations alone could result in criminal charges. I don't want them in jail, I said. I want my grandmother's estate back. That's complicated. The property's already been sold. To my future brother-in-law's father, at $1 million below market value. That's not a sale, it's a gift. One made with my assets while I was serving overseas. His smile was sharp. Now that's interesting. Fraud, conspiracy, violation of fiduciary duty. We can work with this. The next 3 weeks were a blur of depositions, document requests, and increasingly frantic calls from my family. I didn't answer any of them. Melissa left tearful voicemails about how I was ruining her wedding. My father sent texts that alternated between anger and attempts at manipulation. My mother maintained radio silence after her lawyer explained the gravity of the situation. Then came the hearing. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, all wood paneling and uncomfortable chairs. I sat beside James, reviewing notes one last time. My family entered in a cluster. Parents, Melissa, her fiancé, and their lawyer, an overconfident man named Brennan who'd handled their real estate deals for years. My father avoided eye contact. My mother whispered furiously to Melissa, who kept dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. They'd positioned themselves as the victims in this narrative. The dutiful family, trying to help their troubled daughter, who'd abandoned them for the military. All rise. Judge Coleman entered, a former Marine whose no-nonsense reputation preceded her. She reviewed the files before her, expression unreadable. This is a hearing regarding the illegal sale of property belonging to Lieutenant Colonel Marina Martinez, currently deployed with. She paused, reading more carefully. Intelligence Operations, Afghanistan. Is the plaintiff present? I stood. Yes, Your Honor. My mother's stage whisper carried across the courtroom. What's a sergeant going to do? Judge Coleman's eyes snapped up. Excuse me. My mother, realizing she'd been heard, straightened in her seat. I just meant, Your Honor, that our daughter tends to exaggerate her position. She's been away so long and… Mrs. Martinez. The judge cleared his throat. That's Lieutenant Colonel Martinez. The room went silent. Furthermore, Judge Coleman continued, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made grown men reconsider their life choices. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez is not just any officer. She's a decorated intelligence officer with 3 Bronze Stars, a Defense Meritorious Service Medal, and a Joint Service Commendation Medal. Her current security clearance is so high that half her service record is classified. Dad's lawyer asked to withdraw. Excuse me? Judge Coleman's tone could have frozen water. Brennan stood, sweat beading on his forehead. Your Honor, I was not made aware of the full circumstances. My clients led me to believe this was a simple family property dispute with an absent heir. If Lieutenant Colonel Martinez was deployed under SCRA protections, and if her rank and service record are as stated, then I've been inadvertently party to. Sit down, Mr. Brennan. Judge Coleman's voice cracked like a whip. You'll withdraw nothing. You'll face the consequences of failing to do basic due diligence. She turned her attention to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, do you understand what you've done? You sold property belonging to an active duty service member without their consent, without court approval, and while they were deployed in a combat zone. This isn't just illegal, it's a federal crime. My father finally found his voice. Your Honor, we thought Marina would understand. The property was just sitting there, and Melissa needed. What Melissa needed, I interrupted, standing again, was parents who understood the difference between their children's property. What she needed was to learn that marriage doesn't come with a dowry stolen from her sister's inheritance. How dare you? Melissa shot to her feet. You've been gone for years. You abandoned us. I served our country. My voice remained level. I spent 18 months in Afghanistan, 12 in Iraq before that, 6 in Syria. While you were planning your dream wedding, I was identifying threats to national security. While you were picking flowers, I was picking up pieces of soldiers hit by IEDs. The room fell silent again. James stood beside me. Your Honor, we have evidence that the property was sold at significantly below market value to a company owned by the groom's father. This wasn't just theft. It was conspiracy to defraud a deployed service member. I've seen enough. Judge Coleman's expression was granite. The sale of the property is hereby voided. Title will revert immediately to Lieutenant Colonel Martinez. Furthermore, this court finds probable cause for criminal fraud charges against all parties involved in the transaction. But the wedding, Melissa wailed. It's in 3 weeks. Then you have 3 weeks to find a venue you can actually afford, Judge Coleman replied. Court is adjourned. The aftermath was swift. Robert Hayward, suddenly facing criminal charges and the loss of his bargain property, withdrew all financial support for the wedding. Melissa's fiancé, apparently more interested in the estate than her, called off the engagement within a week. My parents faced federal charges that would eventually result in massive fines and probation. I stood in my grandmother's house a month later, surrounded by boxes of family history they'd been days away from discarding. Her journals, my great-grandfather's Civil War letters, photographs spanning 2 centuries of military service. All of it nearly lost to fund a party. My phone buzzed. Another text from my mother. How could you do this to your family? I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up one of Grandma Rosa's journals, opening to an entry from when I'd enlisted. Marina understands what the others don't, that some things are worth more than money. The house isn't just property. It's proof that we stood for something, that we served something greater than ourselves. She'll guard it because she knows its true value. The others see walls and land. She sees legacy. I traced her handwriting with my finger, then sent a single text to my family group chat. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing. So did I. Then I blocked them all. That night, I sat on the porch where Grandma Rosa used to tell me stories of our family's service, from the Alamo to Afghanistan. The stars were bright over San Antonio, and somewhere across the world, soldiers like I'd been were standing watch, protecting people who'd never know their names. The house stood strong around me, preserved not by those who saw its price, but by someone who understood its value. Grandma had known I'd fight for it. She'd known that a girl who chose duty over ease, service over comfort, would become the guardian this legacy needed. She'd been right about everything, including which granddaughter wore the uniform not as a costume, but as a calling. The estate was mine again. But more than that, I was finally home. Not to the family who'd betrayed me, but to the heritage they'd never understood. Some things are worth fighting for. Grandma Rosa had taught me that. The military had taught me how to win.